Hey, everybody. So you might have read in the last few days that Sequoia, one of the biggest names in venture capital, is actually breaking up into three smaller firms focused on key geographies for them. This is big news in the venture space. Sequoia is a name like few others and has performance like few others. But it made me think about something that's actually a little ironic, which is that I would have expected, given what's going on in the venture capital industry, that a normal industry would go through a consolidation cycle. You see, depending on how you count it, there's probably something on the order of 5,000 or 6,000 venture firms in America today. And the last 10 years have been pretty good times. In the salad days of the 20-teens and the early 2020s, folks were able to raise money reasonably easily, were able to stand up small teams, have a thesis, and just start investing in startups. And the Pied Piper is getting paid now. Valuations are down, companies are struggling, companies are, in fact, in various verticals, in particular trouble, and in various parts of the economy, like the growth stage, also really troubled. Normally, in most parts of the economy, when an industry goes through that, you would see consolidation. Weaker companies would get gobbled up by larger companies. You'd have fewer players. Those players would become more powerful. It would be a little bit like, ironically, because of what's going on outside here, a forest fire, which kills the undergrowth, and then you can have new growth in a new forest. That's probably not going to happen in the venture world. Sequoia breaking up is 3 new firms instead of 1. And I think we're going to continue to see proliferation of venture capital firms. And here's why. Number one, in order to have consolidation, you have to have a valuable entity to purchase. And the fact of the matter is, until a venture firm is very clearly going to generate carry, a venture general partnership is not very expensive to buy and therefore not very lucrative to sell. And the minute you have carry, you wouldn't want to sell it anyway. The weaker firms don't have carry. That's why, as an industry over the last 50 years, arguably ventures returned less than the amount of money that's been invested as a group. So the general partnerships aren't that valuable, and they're not that valuable to sell. There's also timelines to take into effect. See, venture firms live about 10 years apiece, and in fact might raise 2 or maybe even 3 funds within the life of each fund. So fund 1 is still going when you're raising fund 2, funds 1 and 2 are still going as you get to 3, et cetera. And so it takes a long time, it's kind of slow-mo to see these things play out. So why would you sell a fund 1 if you have another 7 or 8 years to maybe get things back in order and back going in the right direction? And then last but not least, a lot of general partners, particularly of the smaller, more vulnerable firms, are also maybe not doing this as the only thing they've got going for a living. Maybe they had a big exit, they come from wealthy families. That's not every GP. There's certainly a lot of GPs who really depend on their funds to do well. But as an industry, we have an unusual number of fund managers that don't depend only on that individual fund's success for their living, and so they can kind of let it ride and see what happens. So really the only control on this is the limited partners, or the investors in venture funds. And I think it's important that LPs hold funds responsible for performance, for actually marking down their books if there's things to mark down, which probably everyone has at this point, for living according to their values, for doing good due diligence and driving good governance. Basically, limited partners are the only arbiters of whether the next fund is going to be raised. And these days, limited partners tend to re-up on funds. I'm not going to say automatically, but it's usually something that you would expect. So to the limited partners out there, maybe the consolidation cycle done the way that VC is going to do it is limited partners being really careful about re-upping automatically, and instead thinking critically about where the direction of the industry is going and what funds to back. And maybe some of those are emerging managers that haven't had the chance yet.